My chest were hard and I was tempted to feel them before he got back. He came back with a bottle and a corkscrew and started to open it. He found a glass and nearly filled it. I knew if I drank this all I would feel more than a little buzzed. I reminded myself I had to drive home soon and wanted to be sober. Brian quickly finished his current beer and then grabbed another. I never knew Brian to be a big drinker, so I was a little surprised to see him knocking them back. I figured he had quite a long week and probably needed it. We went back to the bedroom, and after another look around, he suggested we start removing the cloths and arranging the furniture. I set my wine down next to his beer on the dresser and we began to tidy up. I couldn't help but sneak glances at Brian and noticed that he couldn't stop looking at me. I then felt like being mischievous. I was a few feet in front of him and was removing one of the cloths covering their floor, and I bent over as I grabbed it, knowing that he wouldn't be able to resist looking. When I got up, he was looking right at me with a little smirk. When he didn't stop looking, I asked him, "What is it?" And he kind of shook his head and said, "I'm sorry. I couldn't help but notice you through your pants. I hope you don't go out in public with those on." I found myself stuttering, trying to think of something to say. Sorry. I wanted to wear something old as I knew I might ruin them. He smiled and laughed. "You don't need to apologize. And besides, it's not the worst thing to look at." I turned red at that comment and just kind of shook my head. "Okay, let's finish up. Just a couple more to go." We removed the rest of the cloths that were on the floor and furniture and moved the furniture to where he directed. The carpet was brand new, so when Brian removed his boots, I followed suit, removing my trainers and tossed them in the hallway. The room was finally complete and it looked amazing. Brian grabbed his beer and sat on the floor. I grabbed my huge glass of wine and joined him. We again started talking about the room and how he hoped Cassie would be impressed. I assured him it would, and then he started talking about what he had planned to do next. I had drunk about half a glass of my wine while Brian got up to grab another beer. When he came back, he had the bottle of wine with him, and before I could tell him no, he topped my glass off. I jokingly said, "Jesus, Brian, are you trying to get me heck-faced?" And he laughed and said, "Maybe. Would that be so bad?" and winked at me. He sat back down and we just kind of looked at each other. I definitely felt a transition in the mood as we sat in silence for a moment. Brian then started asking me about how I met Cassie, and we ended up talking non-stop for the next hour about what seemed like everything. Brian had another couple beers at this point, and I had done a good number on my glass of wine that was still almost half full. I was feeling it, and I could tell Brian was too, as we both seemed to laugh about everything we talked about. I can't remember what it was, but I remember Brian and I cracking up about something that had happened at the rehearsal dinner that we didn't realize anyone else had noticed. When we both stopped laughing, we both took a sip of our drink and just kind of sat there. Brian was now looking at me, and I could sense that he had something on his mind. We locked eyes for a moment, and I followed his eyes down to my chest. There was no denying the tension that was now between us. When he spoke, he indirectly called me on it. "You know, it's been warm in this house all day. But your chest have been hard for hours now. What's going on with that?" He didn't laugh or smile. I shifted a little and tried to play dumb. "I don't know. I guess I really didn't realize that. What are you doing looking at them anyway?" While raising my eyebrow, trying to make him feel guilty. "Are you serious? Did you not think I wasn't going to notice your yoga pants either? You've been driving me nuts all day with those things. And your chest?" While I was absolutely caught off guard by what he said, I also found myself angry at what he was implying. As if I came here with the intention to jockey for his attention. I looked right at him and said, "Brian, come on. I came over to help you. I didn't realize having another woman in your presence would be such a distraction. I had no idea I was bothering you by what I wore. You've seen me dressed up in more than this. Why is this outfit such a big deal all of a sudden?" He looked perplexed by what I said and defended himself. "Whoa, hold up now. I didn't mean to say that you specifically wore this outfit over here. You look good in everything you wear. That red dress you own? I thought Cassie was going to kill me because I couldn't take my eyes off of you. I'm just saying, you have such an incredible body, and it's extremely hard not to look at you when you're around." I felt like my jaw might hit the floor. Even though he mentioned Cassie, and when he said her name, I felt a twinge of guilt. I also couldn't believe what he just admitted. That he regularly checked me out. And the red dress he was referring to was a dress I wore one time in front of him over 2 years ago. I did remember that I seemed to get a lot of looks when I wore it out to a fundraiser we all had attended, but I had literally no idea that Brian was also looking at me like that, and that he remembered it. Truth be told, I knew that I had a nice body, and that I appealed to a lot of guys. I never felt that way with Brian. Cassie was pretty much the opposite of me, and I understood that other men would find her more attractive, including Brian. Being so short compared to them both, I sometimes felt a little insecure when we'd all hang out and go places. So for Brian to say this, it had affected me in a certain way. As Cassie's best friend, my response should have been to defuse what he had said. But instead I fueled it, in a pathetic effort to feel better about myself. What are you saying? You checked me out? You actually remember that red dress I wore? Are you serious? I'd never forget that red dress. You looked incredible in it. And yes, I check you out. How could I not? I have to fight myself to not stare at you whenever you're around. You're telling me you had no idea? I defended myself. Of course I didn't. Brian, you're my best friend's boyfriend, well, husband. And Cassie is the complete opposite of me. I never really considered you'd think of me like that. I really had no idea. He laughed for a moment and then got serious. Well, yeah, it's not like I was going to be obvious about it. And trust me, Cassie is extremely good in my eyes. But like you said, you guys are opposites. But that doesn't mean I don't find you to be incredibly beautiful. You are perfect. Cassie also is amazing, don't get me wrong. But you have the perfect figure. You can't tell me you don't know that. Out of everything he said, the only thing I responded to was about my figure. Well, yeah, I always knew my figure was my best. Assist, this had us both laughing. He then said, and you look incredible tonight. But I do have to ask, how many wedgies did you get today? Because every time I looked over and saw you bending down, it looked like there was a problem. That had to be uncomfortable. Sometimes I have to fix it, but generally it doesn't feel bad at all. Does it feel like good? Well, yeah, that seemed to linger in the air for a moment. It was now almost 10 p.m. and I still had a quarter of my wine left. I started to say I should get going, but Brian insisted I at least finish my wine. I reasoned with myself I might as well. Then I could have some water, sober up, and get going. Brian got up to grab yet another beer and I sat there thinking about the conversation we just had. I expected to feel guilty about talking like this to my best friend's husband, but instead I felt the opposite. It turned me on. I knew the wine had played a big role in this, but I was really enjoying the wrongness of it. Knowing that he had been checking me out so much in all the time I knew him, while his girlfriend, my closest friend, was right next to him. When Brian came back in, he again had a serious look on his face. He remained standing and looked down at me and said, "You can say no, but I figure I'm never going to get this opportunity again. But can I? See it?" I looked at him confused, unsure of what he meant. See it? See what? Your figure. I want to see it. My figure? Are you serious right now? No, Brian. It's one thing to check it out discreetly, but that's way over the line and you know it. Okay, I'm sorry, but come on. Consider it a special housewarming gift. He said with a smile. No, Cassie would kill us both. Cassie? You think I'd ever tell her? How about this? Just show me your figure. You've been bending over all day anyway. At least let me get to check your figure properly, not being afraid of getting caught. Oh my God, Brian. Really? You want me to do this so you can just look at my figure? Well, you know I have a good memory. I can almost picture you in that red dress. This would be something even better to think back on. Think back on? When? Why would you ever need or want to think back on that? He looked at me and seemed to blush. Well, why do you think? I knew what he meant, but didn't want to say the words. But I did. You was thinking about me? And he smirked and said, yeah, sometimes. So what? The thought of him thinking about me had ignited something in me. I couldn't believe he just admitted it, but I had loved it. I loved knowing my best friend's husband would sometimes think about me. I didn't want to actually say that, but now I was thinking he could check out my figure, memorizing it, so he could keep thinking about me. I can't believe you. Fine. I guess you're right. If you've been looking at me all day already, I guess this wouldn't really be crossing any lines. I used the bed to help me stand up. I definitely felt tipsy, and I felt my heating up. I stepped back and slowly started showing my figure. I was like this for maybe 3 seconds and was about to end the show when he said, "Heck yeah, look at your incredible figure." I looked back at him and we locked eyes. He then said, "Can you show me more of your figure?" I didn't break eye contact and I slowly showed him more of my figure. I saw his eyes go right to me. "Look at your beautiful figure. You look really nice." I watched his face and noticed he was squinting, taking it in. Brian had noticed something too. "I can see you are turned on." I remained bent over and looking at him. He then demanded, "Show me more of your figure." I was feeling so good. "Show you what? You've already gotten more than you asked for. You are loving this just as much as I am. You know you want to show me. So do it." I felt like I was on autopilot as I showed him more of my good figure. I loved seeing the look on his face as he stared intently on me. But he said, "All your figure looks perfect." Make sure to like this video if you want the next part of the story.